I was drawn to acting in this film simply because almost half my life I have wanted there to be a film about Ramanujan. I read G.H. Hardy's Apology for Mathematics when I was at university, and I thought it was one of the most beautiful and extraordinary stories I'd ever read about an intellectual collaboration, and indeed a romantic one, which is the word, interestingly, that Hardy uses of it. I don't think by that we're to infer anything erotic, but romantic in the best Cambridge Platonic sense. There was a shared love of numbers, which for those of us who are not really gifted with numbers is something we can imagine, and is very beautiful. And when you are given the extraordinary distinction between the two cultures from which each came, it is a fantastic and almost unbelievable tale. And the fact that they gave the part of Hardy to some unknown called Jeremy Irons, it did not upset me. I was still very happy to play Francis Spring, who is not a well-known character in the story of Ramanujan and Hardy. He is in fact a very small spring in the coil, but he was an important man in his time, a very important man indeed. He looked nothing like me. He was Irish. He went to Trinity College Dublin rather than Trinity College Cambridge. He was a very, very gifted engineer indeed, and was responsible for a lot of the work on the East India Railway, and indeed for the improvement and the profit increase for the port of Madras. And it was really he who, with a few others, Alfred Bourne was the other, who saw in this postal clerk of high caste but absolute low means a mind like no other. And I think there's something fantastic about such a story. And although I think he found it annoying, Sir Francis Spring, to have this postal clerk taken away from him and to have to get involved in writing letters to universities in London and all the rest of it, there was an element of pride as well. I think he knew that he may be nothing like as good a mathematician as Ramanujan. In fact, probably only 3 or 4 in the world have ever been as good. And I suppose you would argue maybe Turing and a few others, but it's a bit like being Salieri. You noticed Mozart, and in his case, he didn't want to kill him. He wanted to help him, grudgingly at first, and then with greater enthusiasm. I do have a passion for mathematics in as much as I'm utterly fascinated by it. I'm fascinated primarily, as I hope all people are, by the human mind, because it is the most fascinating object in the universe. And that part of the mind that is capable of creating music or creating mathematics or formulating mathematics with such skill, such impenetrable genius, is to me a matter of great interest. So I've read books about Ramanujan, about Alan Turing, about the Hungarian mathematician Erdős, which is a book called The Man Who Loved Only Numbers, which is a very interesting book as well, and about David Hilbert, who is the man who set down the major problems that the 20th century was going to have to face in mathematics, many of which were worked on by Ramanujan and Hardy, particularly the zeta function and the Riemann hypothesis. And so I've always been interested, but I couldn't have any skill. I'm interested in music. I'm massively interested in music. Only a few weeks ago, I was in the tiny little house, narrow house, in the Getreidegasse in Salzburg, where Mozart was born. And I mean, it is extraordinary to think, because it's very touching, because you see these tiny little violins for a child, that's all. And he was, if you like, a kind of Mozart of music, and politically he was very important to Ramanujan. He became very politically important to the emerging independent state of India, because I think there's no way of calling his death a happy one, or the end of his life a happy one. He was very diseased, and his home life was complex, to say the least. But by the time India was fighting for independence, people of great intelligence who had themselves been to Cambridge, because they were, they had the money and the connections and so on, people like Pandit Nehru, let alone predecessors like, of course, Prince Ranjit Singh, they realized that if there was to be an independent India, it was not enough to send off India's geniuses to the universities of England or America or France or Germany, wherever it might be, but that India must have its own technical colleges and universities. And it was a very important feature of Nehru's policy when he became the first Prime Minister of India to institute such buildings so that if ever there were another Ramanujan, he would be Indian through and through. He would not be recognized because he was the first Indian to be a member of the Royal Society, or the first Indian to be a member of an Oxbridge College, but because, like Bose or some, the other great Indian scientists, they would be recognized as members of their true proper state. Interesting fact about my character, which not many people know. Sir Francis Spring was the first man in Madras to own a motor car. There you are. Yes, I was educated at Cambridge, and so I am fully aware, and was from the day I arrived, that it is a place of extraordinary mystery and power and grace, a medieval beauty, and also a terrifying place because there are statues of some of the greatest minds that have ever lived. Trinity College alone, with Lord Byron and Isaac Newton, it's just insane. And there was the poets like Tennyson and Wordsworth, Milton, and in science, the breaking of the DNA code was done at Cambridge, and Rutherford and the splitting of the atom, and of course, there are many other extraordinary ones, not least of which was Charles Darwin, who was a Cambridge man who completely transformed the way we look at the way life originated. So there have been some incredible minds. I was more interested in the fact there have been some incredible actors in Cambridge and comedians, and I wanted to be a sort of comic actor when I started out, and my heroes were Peter Cook and John Cleese and the Monty Python crew who had been there sort of 10 years before, and their photographs were on the wall of the clubroom of what was known as the Footlights Club, where we used to do our comedy. So that's where I met Hugh Laurie and Emma Thompson and others, and how I started out in my career. I'm now lucky enough to be an honorary fellow of my own college, although I am also a bit of a traitor because I am a visiting professor of drama at Oxford University. So I have a foot in each camp, you might say. But they are formidable institutions, there's no question. They're also very hard to explain because they don't follow the model of other universities. So very often an American tourist might come to Cambridge and say, can you tell me where the campus is? And there is no campus. It doesn't work like that. But the most fortunate thing really that happened for Oxford and Cambridge was J.K. Rowling writing the Harry Potter stories, because you can say, look, Hogwarts is a school, right? And there are bits of it. You go off to that, you go to the biology lesson there, you go to the dark arts class there, but you live in your house, and that's like your college. So that's Gryffindor or Hufflepuff or Ravenclaw, yeah? That's your college. So Trinity's a college, but it's not a school. And sometimes people get the idea there. It's the first time I filmed any feature film in India or TV. I filmed a documentary in India. I made a film last year called Out There, which was about the state of homosexual rights around the world in different countries, and obviously we couldn't choose every country in the world, but we wanted to choose countries that were important and outstanding, and amongst them what are cheaply called the BRIC countries are interesting because they are emergent and powerful countries: Brazil, Russia, India and China. China wouldn't let us have a visa, so we filmed in Brazil and Russia and in India, and we filmed in Mumbai because I was particularly interested in the Hijra population, and in talking to some of the queens who run the Hijra groups there, and talking to some of the young boys who are about to become girls, and about the history of such an extraordinary tradition, one which lasted way before Vedic times, and the Mughals accepted it completely because it was very consonant with their idea of the court eunuch, and so they were familiar with the idea. And Hijras were very blessed people and very lucky, and they were considered lucky, and they would bless births and marriages and so on. Then something went very horribly wrong. The British, basically, of course, who couldn't see what this was about and thought it was disgusting. The British brought in, as you know, a law banning gay love of any kind, a law against buggery, as it was called. And the Hijras now are, over 90% of them work in the sex work, and over 40% of them are HIV positive. It's a pretty grim story. But there are some remarkable people out there who are very brave, who are trying to change things in India, and try and in the same way that Bangalore and Hyderabad and other such places are becoming tech hubs, trying to make India a place where people can feel it's a cultural hub, you know, where artistic creation and freedom of expression and freedom of identity can coexist with the traditions of caste and family without destroying the nature of the country. I think that's a very important thing. Of course, what went wrong when the British law was overturned was that the court, quite rightly said, the court cannot overturn a law, only a legislature can overturn a law. So whether or not it's very high up on Modi's list to legalise gay love, I don't know. I suspect it isn't very high up. But given the importance, which fascinates me, because I think it's probably greater in India than any country I've visited, the importance of family. I think there's counterintuitive. On the one hand, a level of bisexuality has always been accepted, so I've been told by a lot of Indian people, in a sort of way that they prefer not for it to be spoken about, but it just happens. And on the other hand, people recognise if they have a gay son who is not going to marry, the grandmother is rubbing her hands with glee because she knows who's going to be looking after her for the rest of her life. And that's very important. It's important to have families where everybody's looked after, which we don't have in Britain, and which is a matter of great shame for Britain, I think. So that was interesting. So that was the only time I filmed in India. I'd been to India before. I came, funnily enough, was to try and arrange a film treaty for independent film companies between an Indian company and Indian group, representative group, and a British representative group. It fell out for some reason. I can't remember what the problem was. It was to do with tax credits. Three letters that may have, possibly, I hope not, undermined your enjoyment of this little chat. The three letters are H-O-T, hot. And that's why, despite the sound man whining at me, I have insisted that the air conditioning has stayed on, because I would be drenched. I really feel heat more than most English people, and English people feel it badly. And as you know, during the Empire, the British had their hill stations where they kept cool when it was in the really hot months. We're just not made for this kind of weather. And I find it difficult inside a set when you've got lamps and cameras and unbelievable heat to do the same thing again and again when people have to come up and they're padding and wearing a stiff 19th century collar. It's melting. into ice cream. And to keep one's concentration. So, I mean, everybody is so kind and so nice here, so friendly. They're really enjoying themselves. Everywhere I look, I see a smile, and so that makes it so much easier. But goodness me, I wish someone would just find somewhere in India, there's a little control knob, and you just turn the temperature down just a little bit. Yeah, can you manage that? Then you will have the perfect country.